let me just be clear in stating that no one in California, no one in Southern California was surprised or shocked by the high-speed winds that we were hit with last week. We knew about it a week prior. We knew that those high Santa Ana winds were very likely going to create a...
Anna Kasparian is absolutely lighting up those California Democrats, exposing them for what they really are. It's honestly refreshing to see someone call it like it is. Anna Kasparian is really stepping up and putting the spotlight on the truth. Let's dive into this clip and check it out.
Just a situation in which a fire would get out of control, right? And so fires start for a multitude of reasons. We have aging power lines and infrastructure here. Just a situation in which a fire would get out of control, right? And so fires start for a multitude of reasons. We have aging power lines and infrastructure here that has sparked fires in the past. We have dry conditions, okay? Even though we had record rain last year and the year before that, this year we haven't had rain yet. So there are dry conditions. So you have the Santa Ana winds, the dry conditions, and you also have this aging electrical infrastructure that could spark a fire. And so what we needed more than anything was to be prepared for a worst case scenario. We needed to ensure that all of our reservoirs were filled. We're now learning that one of them, the Santa Ynez Reservoir that carries 117 million gallons of water, was emptied nearly a year ago for minor repairs. That reservoir should have been filled in the lead up to the Santa Ana winds. But what makes it clear to me that our mayor, Karen Bass, underestimated the fire weather is that she didn't do that. She didn't prepare, and in fact felt the need to go watch another sovereign country's president get inaugurated. That doesn't benefit the people of Los Angeles. I don't understand why Angelenos funded that trip to begin with, but it gives you a sense of what these local politicians really care about, and it's themselves, their own political careers, and it disgusts me. Gavin Newsom, in every single interview I've seen him do, has passed the buck, even though he is the governor of this state. Yeah. He is pathetic. He's a snake. He's like the slimiest Democratic politician, certainly on a local level. But what we have seen is mismanagement of epic proportions. The existence of climate change should not be utilized as a talking point in order to pass the buck, in order to deflect blame, in order to refuse to take any personal responsibility for how poorly this state has been governed for several years now. I am so disgusted with these people. I mean, Newsom is the governor. He's the top dog in California.
It's clear Anna Kasparian is absolutely disgusted by what's happening. She's been outspoken about how California's leadership has completely failed the state. She sees the mismanagement, the lack of accountability, and the constant blame shifting onto things like climate change instead of addressing the real issues. Whether it's the fires, the homelessness, the crime, or the crumbling infrastructure, Anna's not holding back on how appalled she is by the whole situation. And honestly, can you blame her? It's frustrating to watch these so-called leaders let things spiral out of control and then point fingers everywhere except at themselves. From empty reservoirs to defunded fire departments, it's like they're actively ignoring their responsibilities while everyday people are left to deal with the consequences. Anna's disgusted, and frankly, so are a lot of people. If you're enjoying this kind of content and want to see more, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me a lot and keeps the conversation going. Let's get back to it.
You know, you blew the whistle on the PG&E scandal that I'm not hearing anything about right now, and I can't articulate the way that you do, and I learned about it, as mentioned, from you. So I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about that. You have a brilliant 20-minute video that I posted on X the other day, but can you encapsulate what happened there and what role Newsom played in letting PG&E off the hook?
Well, essentially what he did was bail out PG&E, even though PG&E essentially started the fires in Paradise, California.
Right.
They couldn't be bothered to replace a $10 hook that was nearly 100 years old, and that hook was holding the power lines up.
Right.
So just think about that. These hooks are basically falling apart. Power lines are falling. We have dry conditions in California. And so it's a tinderbox. We live in a tinderbox right now. I mean, Newsom, of course, also can't be bothered to clear the dry brush, had cut funding for that. Anyway, but putting that aside, after the fires happened in Paradise, California, and so many people lost their homes, lost everything they had worked for, Newsom comes in because PG&E is one of his major donors and essentially bails them out and structures a settlement with the individuals who lost their homes in such a way that it's essentially tied to the value of the shares for the stock of PG&E. And so it created this situation in which the very people who lost everything because of the greed of this utility company now have to root for this utility company to maximize their profits if they are to get any money as part of their settlement. And there was a lot more to that story. It is a 20-minute video. Please check it out if you guys want to learn more.
In the comments below as well.
But it shows you that the Democratic Party, what I have noticed is that they engage in quite a bit of projection because they do love to point fingers at the inept governance of Republicans, the corruption that you see among the Republican Party. I mean, a good example of that is what happened in Texas when the privatized energy grid in Texas went out in the middle of a disastrous winter storm, and hundreds of people died as a result of that. That was also the crisis in which Senator Ted Cruz was caught going Mexico, to Cancun for vacation.
I remember.
And Democrats had no problem calling him out for that. But for some reason, they are providing cover for Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, leaving us behind in order to go see another country's president get inaugurated. So if you have any fire that you're directing toward Republicans for their inept governance, I am not going to take anyone seriously if they're unwilling to apply that same logic, that same reasoning toward Democratic lawmakers, Democratic politicians who have also failed the people who they're supposed to be representing. These people do not care about us. And at this point, there needs to be a reckoning within the Democratic Party in regard to their failures, in regard to the fact that they engage in the same behavior that they criticize their political opponents of. People lost everything.
Hey folks, sorry to pause here, but I want to hear from you. Take a moment to leave a comment and let me know what you think about this whole situation. Do you think the blame lies with the leadership, or is there more to the story?
I spoke to someone who left California, after 2020. And she told me the reason why she decided to leave is because she realized if we were in crisis, no one was coming. Californians who do not want to build more homes, for instance, because they're trying to protect the value of their home. But listen, homeboys and homegirls, like you want to protect the value of your home. You're not going to be able to do that when the state is ravaged by wildfires that firefighters are unable to effectively fight back against because of the lack of reservoirs. So you look at the Pacific Palisades, there's been a lot of BS from the Democratic Party in order to defend, their behavior here.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, the way the pressure in the fire hydrants work is wholly dependent on the volume of water in the reservoirs. The fact that a 117 million gallon reservoir was empty certainly exacerbated the issues that the firefighters were dealing with. The fact that Mayor Karen Bass cut the fire budget, the operational portion of the fire budget, to the tune of $17.8 million was a problem. For all the Democrats coming at me and saying, no, she actually raised the fire budget. No, she didn't. She increased the salaries of the existing firefighters. She cut the operational fire budget, which is a different pot of money. And that operational fire budget was incredibly important in hiring civilian employees who did important things, like the mechanics, who would fix the fire trucks.
Right.
We have dozens of fire trucks that are out of commission as we speak because they don't have the workers to fix them. They don't have the funding to fix them. And I'm sorry, I am not going to buy for a second that we have a revenue problem in the state of California. We do not. We are the highest tax state. We pay incredibly high sales taxes, certainly in LA County. We pay incredibly high state taxes.
Yep, the highest.
Okay. And so explain to me how it is that this state can squander $24 billion on nonprofits for homeless services. Audits indicate that that money is unaccounted for. Homelessness has exploded in this state. We keep pouring tens of billions of dollars in, more and more for homeless services, a problem that just keeps getting worse. Why are we diverting funds to these nonprofits that are stealing from us when this taxpayer money should be utilized to build up our infrastructure, make us more resilient in response to wildfires? I mean, there's so much waste, so much graft, so much corruption in this state. And again, right now, the Democratic Party is scrambling because they can't blame the Republicans for this. They control the state. The buck stops with them. I mean, look, I get that people don't think that it would make that much of a difference if Karen Bass was here 100% of the time in the lead up to the fires and hadn't gone to Ghana. I disagree. I think her trip to Ghana gives you a sense of what her priorities are.
Gavin Newsom and May Bass clearly couldn't care less about California at this point. May spends more time overseas in Africa than actually handling business back in the state, and honestly, it's pretty clear she never really wanted to be mayor. As for Gavin, he's just trying to clean up his image, all while secretly plotting for a presidential run in 2028. California's problems? Not his problem, at least not in his eyes. These Democrats love to point fingers and blame climate change for everything, from defunding the fire departments to letting reservoirs go dry. They avoid taking any accountability for the mess they've made. California was once the most prosperous state in the country, but now it's become a disaster zone. From out-of-control crime, looting, and homelessness to drug issues, and of course, wildfires, this state is a wreck, and it's only getting worse. The incompetence is unreal. I honestly think criminal charges should be on the table because someone needs to take the fall. Leadership means owning up to the mistakes, but these guys are nowhere to be found when it's time to take responsibility. They've let the state fall apart, and it's been a disaster every step of the way. Take the reservoirs, for example. The most crucial one was left empty for a whole year because they had to fix the cover. Seriously? If there's a fire, I'd rather have dirty water to fight it than nothing at all. But no, instead, these leaders have just watched as California literally burned to the ground. This whole thing could have been avoided, at least managed better, if anyone in charge actually cared. Honestly, California would probably be better off without them. We don't need them running the show anymore. A change in leadership could only improve things, even if it's just someone with a little common sense.